think it was honestly a very long story because it starts obviously with the family, but my personal journey was also sort of a series of events that happened rather than one specific moment for me. I think that it had a lot to do with my parents. My mum worked for the company as well as my dad. It was where they met. And mum actually wanted to be a winemaker. And dad worked in IT for the company for basically his whole career. But it was sort of just that thing my parents did for most of my childhood. But when I was sort of leaving school, the company did a cadetship program for members of the family to be introduced to the company. Dad thought that I would want to do it, but my uncle thought I would, and he offered me, said you should really apply for it and go ahead and do it, and I did, and it sort of just snowballed from there. I did different parts of the company. I did supply chain, finance, sales, that sort of thing. But falling into winemaking was, I'm a scientist at heart, I think, and I worked in the lab for a bit, did a couple of vintages, and it just sort of happened naturally. I went back to uni to do wine science, and then the company asked me if I wanted to be a winemaker, and I said yes, and I started out as an assistant winemaker. I don't think I sort of let being a woman impact coming into the business. I think that was not a consideration for me. I just tried to show what I was capable of and let that speak for itself regardless of everything else. I think that winemaking is both sort of a science and an art for me. You need to understand how all the bits and pieces work and why you do certain things and what impact that has, but making a wine a certain way or into a certain style is very much like an art form. And I think for me the creativity is what's at the heart of what I do. I think my first vintage, when I did 2 weeks, one vintage in the lab 2 years before I moved to Griffith, I came down for 2 weeks and I worked in the lab, and I think that was the moment where I went, this is what I want to do and I want to work in this industry. I think that sustainability is becoming something people talk about more, but I think for me it's been more of I've seen changes from what the generation before me experienced to what I do, more than I've seen it in the last 8-9 years that I've been working in the industry. This has been the biggest crush I've ever experienced. It's the most amount of tons we've brought in. So it was a bigger challenge in that regard. It was obviously a lot busier and things like that. I think every vintage is different, and this was a warmer year, so that brought challenges as well. But I think the wines are looking good, so that means it's been a good year, I guess. I think not taking it too seriously has been a massive thing. I say every vintage is different. The wine looks different when it first comes through the crusher. And so it's about working with what you've got to get it where you want it to be. And I think not focusing too much on what you would like it to look like. You've got to work with what you've got, I guess, is the philosophy that we work with. The winemakers take on certain varieties from crush to bottle. So I work a lot with whites, so I make all our Chardonnays, all of our Moscatos. I also make all of the Aperas, which is kind of what McWilliams is known for, is their cream Apera was the big one in the late 60s, 70s, that was the big one. But it's kind of just, we all have varieties we look after, and then obviously it's a massive team effort just to get everything ready, but I just work with specific varieties to get it from start to finish. I think it is very much more intuition. It's, like I was saying earlier, you work with what you've got. So what the vintage gives you, what comes off the vine, that's what you've got to work with. So you work with what you're looking at. You don't, that's the only way really to do it. I think that you have a house style in that the business or the brand has certain styles that they work with. And so I think the way you produce wine comes out a lot based on what the brand wants and what the company does. So it is a little bit you, but I don't think that I have a specific, something that comes through in every wine I make. The first time a wine I'd made won a trophy at a wine show. That definitely meant something. I think there is a place for tradition, but I also think that at the end of the day, winemaking is a science. And science is progressive. You're learning new things all the time, new techniques become available, new technologies. So I think in that regard, you've got to move with what's new. But I think that there's a space for tradition, especially in a family business. But I think it's more about the brand and the labels and the bottles and stuff than it is the actual winemaking. I think that we're getting, obviously vintages are getting warmer, which has an impact on the agriculture. So that means that the grapes that we're getting look a bit different, depending, again, every vintage is different, but as we start getting warmer temperatures, and this year we had very little rain, I think that impacts what we do. Every region is different, and we're impacted by the weather in the region. And the Riverina is obviously a warm climate, so that will impact the way we make our wines. My favourite one to make is Tumbarumba Chardonnay, which obviously is not like local varieties, but I just think that there's a lot of room for experimentation when I get to work with it. And I just love the chance to do something fun and creative, and that'd be my favourite one. I think that mentoring the people who come in is always a big part of our job, to be honest, because uni can teach you so much, but you learn from the senior winemakers in your team. I personally felt that was where I learnt most of how I do things and all of that. So I do think that is important. I think it's important in your business to do it for everyone, I guess. It's not just about being female, it's about all of the young winemakers who want to join up and do what you do. I do think that the Riverina wine industry, it's small, so we pretty much all know each other. And I think that there's a community there that is very supportive, and I don't think I've never had a moment where I'm like, that needs to change. I just think that we should have quality, obviously. That's obviously the whole point, is to get equality between men and women. But I think that the wine industry has come a long way, especially it might not have been the last decade, but I certainly think in the last 4 or 5, it's come a long way. And there's a lot more women working in it now than there was. And I hope that honestly, the best part about working in the wine industry is that I get up in the morning, I put on high vis and my boots, and I go to work. Yeah. I don't have to wear a pencil skirt, I don't have to wear heels, I just get up and I go, and it's excellent. It's my favourite part. So not having to think about it. I think winemaking is both a science and an art. And it's all about using what you know as a scientist to create something that people will want to drink. So I do think that is a major part of it, and that's where it shows up. Drinking wine's about finding something you like. It's not about whether you can describe if it smells like blackberries or whatever. It's about finding something you like and enjoying it. And that's what I hope for when people drink any wine I make. But I think, I don't really mind what people think when they hear my story. Everyone's had a different experience in their career, and that's just mine. I hope that people see, I think the hard work and just the results of what you do, that is probably what you want people to remember, because it's, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing.